And welcome back to the Hot Lap. We are talking George Russell pole position in Canada. King George reigns. And I'm not saying he stole it completely, but a lot of people are suggesting, where did that come from Mercedes? Now, there were hints in the practice sessions, but still, going into qualifying, a lot of people were saying, it's now got a bit hot in Canada. It's the warmest it's been. Mercedes equals no for pole, except no one told George. So, congratulations, an absolutely stunning lap for George Russell. I mean, yes, we can all say he outdrove the car, etc. As you know, physics, that's impossible. The car can only go as finitely as it can. I know that sounds a bit boring, doesn't it? But in terms of surprise, I don't think anyone really expected him to get pole position. He was kind of there or thereabouts. And then he was there. Now, in relation to Max Verstappen, he also put in an absolutely amazing lap, and everyone's heaps of praise for Max. Well done, you outdrove the car again, etc, etc. So I just hope there's a smidgen of positivity all around the globe for George Russell in what was an absolutely amazing lap, up there with Max Verstappen's Japan lap. And to be fair to Max, you could make an argument that car shouldn't be where it really is. But then, to be fair for George, he's got a car that, let's be fair, it's designed for both him and Kimi Antonelli. In Max, it's designed for Max. I think we've kind of proven that factor now with how slow Yuki Tsunoda's been, how slow Lawson's been, and how slow Sergio Perez has been over the years. That's not to take away from an excellent second place for Max Verstappen, which makes for a very tasty, a very spicy, very interesting first corner. But this is what George had to say. What a bleeping lap. You beauty. Woohoo. He knew it was good. And Toto, yeah, George, that was not bleep. It was brilliant. It was fantastic. And that is, before we get in, obviously, to the complete grid. George, how did he get pole position? Well, when we have a look here, this is the first practice session where, let's be honest, I mean, Kimi Antonelli was 13th for Mercedes, and George Russell was 4th for Mercedes. It really, I mean, he was like about 3 tenths, just 4 tenths shy. And it was looking not too bad when we go to practice 2. However, again, Russell fastest. It was looking, at this point, it was looking good. But the issue is, practice 1 and 2, how many people really, if they're really honest with each other, take a look at the practice session and think, yeah, that's it. That's going to be us. So when we look at practice session 3, George Russell again in the ballpark, just a 10th and a half off. But once again, you have got Norris and Leclerc, and everyone knew, you kind of knew, Verstappen on, just shy of 3 tenths off was going to be there or thereabouts, because he's an excellent driver, and also not much is said of how amazing that Red Bull team is in terms of the engineers, in terms of the factory back at Milton Keynes, the fact that they can turn the car around, and they have done so many times with their last minute setups and changes, which seem to work really well for the Red Bull team. So well done Red Bull, and well done Max Verstappen. Because he felt coming in, he wasn't amazingly confident, especially on the Friday. Now, when we look at qualifying, obviously, it ended up being obviously George Russell on pole over the 1:10.899, very fast indeed. And funny enough, he got pole position here last year. But now let's have a look at the grid, yeah, because when we look at the grid and we look at George Russell, the temperature was up, people were thinking no, and it was just as an absolutely mega lap, as was Max Verstappen's lap, but George's was more-ish mega. But let's be fair, it couldn't be set up for a better first corner. So third, we got Piastri, really disappointing in the McLarens. And where were they? Now, to be fair to Piastri, he said, well, to be fair, we were absolutely nowhere on Friday, so I'll take this. 4th, Antonelli. 5th, well done, Lewis Hamilton. 6th, Fernando Alonso. The Aston Martin looking super sweet. 7th, Lando Norris. Oh, Lando, what happened to you? Have we had is this the return of Choke Norris? I really hope so. Not. But he just didn't get a good lap in, didn't he? He looked fairly good the whole way through qualifying until you needed to do the lap and the pressure was on. 8th, Charles Leclerc. again, he was on an absolute mega lap, and then he got held up supposedly by Hadjar. He didn't get held up by Hadjar, but in Leclerc's mind, he definitely did. When you look at it, when you look at back at the replays, no, in no way amongst the Sundays was Charles Leclerc held up by Lando Norris. In 9th, you've got Isaac Hadjar, the man that held him up. 10th, Alexander Albon. Now let's talk about Alexander Albon quickly, because this was his car not too long after after the ending of the first qualifying session. Essentially his old bodywork came off. It was everyone was safe. It was almost quite comical. It reminded me of Jean Lacey at Hockenheim in 94-95, the Ferrari body completely coming off. I'm not sure whether that was the race or practice session. So the fact that Alex Albon got his head together, got in that top 10, kept it all together. The team did an absolutely stunning job of getting that car ready. Bang. I mean, absolute double thumbs up to Williams. So, Colapinto, 11th. Not bad. I mean, in terms of he had qualified Gasly, he's all the way down in 19th. And this looks like the Colapinto we saw when he first initially joined the Williams before it all went wrong. Long may it continue for Colapinto. Hulkenberg again, putting arguably the worst car up there along with Bortoleto, to the point where you've got to question now whether this is indeed the worst car. We have Hulkenberg. We've got Mr. Behrman in 13th. Not bad. Not bad at all. Again, out qualifying Esteban Ocon. That's all he needs to do, isn't it? That is I think that's the maximum most people, he could really think of doing, is beating Ocon. I mean, the issue is Ocon's a lot more experienced, and we know how talented Ocon is. Everyone expected Ocon to beat him. Bortoleto obviously 15th. We talked about that. Carlos Sainz, he got really, really held up by Hadjar, who is potentially going to get a penalty. We haven't quite seen it yet, but yeah. No, Isaac Hadjar, he really screwed Sainz over, who was about 2-3 tenths up, who arguably would have made it in. And it shows you somehow no rule is ever perfect, but in relation to the Q1, Q2 and Q3, how difficult it was. So, Bortoleto, 15th, Carlos Sainz 16th, Stroll, let's talk about Lance Stroll. Okay, this guy, he had allegedly has a tantrum in the Spanish qualifying session after Spain. Whether or not he hurt his wrist or not, the team aren't going to say anything, because Daddy Stroll pays the bills. So they don't believe a word they say. I mean, they could be telling the truth. It's kind of like the boy who cried wolf at this point. We know he pays your bills. We're not going to believe you. And, he has a massive strop, has a thing back on his wrist, and then comes back. Now, and this is complete conjecture, if Lance Stroll has come back with a wrist injury, and he's not as good as he was, I think that's incredibly selfish. Not only for the mechanics that worked very hard on his car. If you remember, Stroll had a whoops-a-daisy like Leclerc in the practice session. Not only that, but it stops anyone else getting in that Aston Martin, which I think Lance Stroll, and conspiracy theorists, get your tinfoil hats on, that's not what either Lawrence or Lance want, because I almost guarantee you that they'll probably be a bit more impressive than Lance Stroll going into, had it been, for example, Drugovich, who's at Le Mans, but he said he would have cancelled his Le Mans for it, and he suddenly gets up there in the top 10 near Fernando Alonso. Everyone's going to say, why do we need Stroll? I mean, the team, I don't know if they're saying that, but I'm sure they might whisper it, because this guy is just an absolute weapon on track. 18th, Liam Lawson. Not good, not great. 19th, Gasly. Tsunoda obviously qualified a bit high, but he starts at 20th because he ended up passing under a red flag. Whoops-a-daisy, something you never do. You're screwed, essentially. Not much. There's absolutely nothing he can do about that. So yeah, Yuki P2, Yuki P11, qualified P11, so he didn't even get in the top 10, and Max obviously P2. So disappointing for Yuki, but it again, as we keep saying, it again suggests that the car is set up and made for Max, in my opinion. So Max Verstappen, he got really annoyed, but we'll get into that, because at the first corner, they were asking Max about the first corner, which annoyed him, and Russell was saying, I've got a few more points on my licence to play with, so starting turn one, Max has a lot more to lose. I mean, to be fair, George has too. If you get, I mean, you can. They say you can never win a race at the first corner, but you can certainly lose one at the first corner. That's the danger of those two. And Oscar Piastri coming on either the inside or the outside, passing them both. We're going to have to see. This is Max Verstappen. So in the official press conference after qualifying, he said he was asked about obviously his point. It's really peeing BISSING me off. It's such a waste of time. It's childish. Really, really annoying. This is the clip from the interview. Here we go. This is Max being annoyed about being asked about his license points
thing. You're alongside George.
I don't need to hear it again. It's really pissing me off. I mean, you speaking about it on Thursday, it's such a waste of time. It's very childish. So that's why I also don't want to say too much, because it's really...
Okay, it's annoying him. It's annoying him. It's very childish. I mean, I would take that throw that straight back at Max's face. Don't hit George Russell. Don't use your car as a battering ram, Max. That's the childish thing. And him calling anyone childish is absolutely, I mean, practice what you preach, really, because he's arguably the most, maybe with the Lance Stroll, the most childish person on the grid in terms of F1 drivers. If I don't have it my way, I'm just going to throw my dummy and everything else out the pram and verbally abuse my race engineer and the other team members. Yeah, Max. The only childish one coming out of that, I think, was you after that. Sadly, good driver, really childish. I still say should have been disqualified from the Spanish Grand Prix. Tsunoda here is obviously receiving the 10-place grid penalty. Sad times for Tsunoda. This was obviously this is the steward thing. The steward, her driver number 2, represented and reviewed the obviously the telemetry and stuff. Car 81 had earlier collided with the barrier at the exit of turn 7, first 14, and damaged the rear white. Red flag was displayed when car 22 was at turn 6. Car 20 reduced speed at that point. After turn 12, car 22 was approaching car 81 on the back straight. The driver of car 22 said he saw car 81 travelling slowly on the left side of the track with obvious damage, and he said he was worried that he might be struck by the debris, which is, I guess, fair enough. And then he was travelling, car 81 was travelling 86. Car 22 overtook at a speed of 171. And obviously he got the penalty. Yeah, that's a stone bonk. I think maybe if he overtook it, I don't know, 92 or 10 kilometres faster, they might have a thing. Because ultimately, the issue with the red flag is, and I get it, I get why Tsunoda got the penalty, and he deserved it, is, okay, he sees a car there, but he doesn't know what else is on the track. That's why the red flag, there could be a crazy man on the track as well. There could be anything on the track. A massive brick that someone thought. I mean, the issue, yeah, a bit silly, but the issue is, he does not know why that red flag is called. He's just guessing. And yeah, fair dues. I mean, it's a stone bonker. Obviously, this is P12, P20, which is eventually P11 and P19 for Colapinto. And I want to say, well done to Franco Colapinto. With all the pressure coming into the Canadian Grand Prix, when we did our preview, we even said he needs a good race. He needs a good qualifying. And to be fair, to get P11 and absolutely mutilate Pierre Gasly, at least when you look at the standings after qualifying, is a massive plus. He did it. Don't throw it in the wall. Get your first points on the board, Franco, and we're looking good. Ferrari, I mean, in the practice session, they were like, okay, and then Charles Leclerc looked really, really fast. Hamilton struggled a bit in the first qualifying session, but got together. I can't help but think what would have happened if Charles Leclerc, on his last lap in Q3, he was doing absolutely amazing first sector, fastest of all. And I wonder what would have happened. But then, sadly, he kind of like lost it. Oversteer, understeer, any way which steer he seemed to have in that Ferrari. And it sadly wasn't good enough. And Lewis starts P5 and Charles Leclerc P8. Disappointing, I think, for the Ferrari. However, excuse me. However, the icing on the cake here, and there is a positive for Ferrari, is last year they weren't even in Q3. So P5 and P8, Fred Vassar's job is still safe, hopefully. Well, I mean, I'll probably do another video about the Fred Vassar issue, but the Fred Vassar issue is, if they get rid of him, they got no hope for 26, 27, I think. Who's going to take his place? It's just ridiculous. It's a ridiculous scenario. And this is obviously Charles Leclerc. He was obviously convinced that Hadjar, held up by Hadjar. No, it was the dirty air, probably. So, once again, McLaren's qualifying. P3, well done for Piastri. Once again, Piastri happy with the qualifying, considering where they were on Friday. I still think race pace, you've got to think Piastri, if you can get out that first corner, is arguably favourite to win still with that McLaren race pace, especially if it's hot. with Lando Norris P7. I don't think anyone expected that. I mean, Lewis Hamilton out-qualified him. Who else? Who else? Quick see who else out-qualified. Yeah, you got Norris out. I mean, Fernando Alonso out-qualified him. Yeah, that's not particularly great, is it? In the Aston Martin. So work to do for Lando. People have come through from lower to win. So I guess we're going to have our fingers crossed. I still think McLaren is the fastest car on race pace, both of them. And even Damon Hill came out. Lando, what are you doing? Someone's put, he even got coached through qualifying. What an absolute stinker. He's the number 2 driver. He needs a mental coach. No shame, but it seems to struggle mentally, and it shows in his post-session interviews. Yeah, he kind of does. Lando's mentally weaker than the other front-running drivers. Yeah, you could probably now begin to make that argument because it is kind of a bit, rinse and repeat. But, yeah. Anyway. Once again, congratulations to George Russell. What an absolutely amazing pole position. But until then, give us a subscribe. If you're not subscribed, please, that would be amazing. If you're already subscribed, you just watching this video is more than enough for us. But until then, speak to you soon. Speak to you after the race at some point, I imagine, as well. And above all else, stay safe. See you later.